As the world quiets and the stars begin to speckle the velvet sky, let's slip into a story that unfolds in the cobblestone streets of 18th century France. A tale of whispers in candle-lit taverns, of restless hearts yearning for change, and of a nation teetering on the edge of upheaval. Tonight, we're not here to rush through facts or dazzle with dates. Instead, we'll wander slowly through the shadows of the French Revolution, a time when dreams of liberty clashed with the weight of tradition, when the voices of the many rose against the silence of the few. This is a story for those drifting toward sleep, for those who find comfort in the gentle cadence of history's unfolding. Picture a bustling Paris, where the scent of fresh-baked bread mingles with the dust of crowded markets, where nobles glide in gilded carriages while others toil for a single coin. The year is 1789, and beneath the surface of this vibrant city, a storm is brewing. The French Revolution wasn't just a moment, it was a tide, a swelling wave of hope, fear, and fury that reshaped a nation and echoed across the world. In this video, we'll trace its origins, from the quiet discontent of the countryside to the fiery debates in grand halls, from the storming of fortresses to the rise and fall of ideals that promised a new dawn. This isn't about memorizing names or battles. It's about feeling the pulse of a people who dared to dream of something different. So, settle into your blankets, let the world fade, and allow the story to carry you. We'll walk through the gardens of Versailles, where kings and queens danced in blissful ignorance, and through the narrow alleys where revolutionaries whispered of freedom. We'll meet the dreamers, the schemers, the heroes, and the heartbroken, all woven into a tapestry of a nation reborn. This is history told softly, meant to guide you toward restful dreams where the past hums like a lullaby. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let's step into a world long gone, yet ever alive in its echoes. Hello, my name is Sherry, and welcome to my channel. So let's begin. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sprawling gardens of Versailles, let's step into France, a land shimmering with beauty yet trembling with unease. It's the late 1780s, and the air carries the scent of blooming jasmine from the palace grounds, mingling with the earthier smells of sweat and toil from the villages beyond. France is a kingdom of contrasts, where the dazzling opulence of the few stands in stark relief against the quiet struggles of the many. Picture the grand halls of Versailles, where chandeliers glitter like captured stars, their light dancing on gilded mirrors and silk tapestries. Here, nobles in powdered wigs and embroidered coats glide through minuets, their laughter echoing as they sip wine from crystal goblets. The palace is a world unto itself, a dream of endless splendor, where time seems to pause in deference to the monarchy's divine right. But beyond the manicured hedges, another France breathes, a France of muddy fields and weary hands. In the countryside, peasants bend over their crops, their backs aching under the weight of taxes that seem to grow heavier with each harvest. The Third Estate, as they're called, comprises nearly everyone: farmers, bakers, cobblers, and merchants, yet they bear the burden of a kingdom's ambitions. Their homes are modest, often little more than stone cottages with thatched roofs, where families huddle around meager fires to share bread that's more grit than grain. The tax collectors come relentlessly, demanding tithes for the church, dues for the Lord, and levies for the king. A single bad harvest can mean starvation, and the whispers of resentment grow louder with each empty stomach. In the cities, Paris hums with a different kind of life. The streets are a labyrinth of cobblestones, alive with the clatter of carts and the shouts of vendors hawking their wares. Markets brim with the scent of fresh fish and the tang of overripe fruit, while artisans hammer away in cramped workshops. But even here, the weight of inequality presses down. The urban poor, squeezed into tenements, dream of the luxuries they'll never touch. A loaf of bread, once a simple staple, has become a luxury as prices soar, and the bakeries are often guarded by soldiers to prevent riots. The people talk in hushed tones, their voices carrying a mix of fear and defiance, as pamphlets criticizing the crown pass from hand to hand in the shadows. At the heart of this divided kingdom sits King Louis XVI, a man whose crown feels heavier than he expected. He's not a cruel king, not in the way of tyrants from Thales, but rather a man caught in a role he never quite mastered. In his private moments, he tinkers with clocks, finding solace in their predictable mechanisms, a stark contrast to the unpredictable tides of his realm. Beside him is Marie Antoinette, the queen whose Austrian origins and love of extravagance make her a lightning rod for gossip. The people call her Madame Deficit, blaming her for the kingdom's woes, though her days are spent in a gilded cage, surrounded by courtiers who flatter while they scheme. Together, they rule a nation that feels like a tapestry fraying at the edges, each thread pulling loose under the strain of want and ambition. The nobles, the Second Estate, live in a world apart, their lives a parade of privilege. They own vast estates, collect feudal dues, and pay no taxes, their wealth insulated by centuries of tradition. Yet even they feel the tremors of change. The ideas of the Enlightenment, liberty, reason, equality, are seeping into salons and coffee houses, where men and women debate the rights of man over cups of steaming chocolate. These ideas are dangerous, like sparks near dry tinder, and they find fertile ground among a people tired of bowing. The church, the First Estate, holds sway over souls and purses, its cathedrals looming as reminders of divine order, yet even its priests hear the murmurs of discontent from their flocks. As night falls over France, the stars seem to watch in silence, bearing witness to a kingdom on the cusp. In the villages, families gather to share what little they have, their voices low as they speak of a future where no one goes hungry. In Paris, the lanterns flicker, casting long shadows where secrets are traded. And in Versailles, the king and queen retire to their chambers, unaware that the world they know is slipping away. The stage is set, the players poised, and history holds its breath, waiting for the moment when whispers become shouts, when dreams ignite into action. What could spark such a fire, and who would dare to light it? Let's drift deeper into this story, where the first embers are already glowing. As the moon rises over the glittering spires of Versailles, its pale light reveals a kingdom not just divided by class, but teetering on the edge of ruin. The France of the 1780s is a land where the grandeur of the palace masks a creeping decay, where the clink of gold in royal coffers has faded to a hollow echo. The nation's wealth, once a river, has dwindled to a trickle, drained by wars, extravagance, and a system that creaks under its own weight. Let's wander through this twilight, where the scent of lavender from the royal gardens mingles with the faint, bitter tang of desperation, and where a king and queen, caught in their own gilded world, begin to feel the ground shift beneath them. The trouble begins far from the polished halls of Versailles, across the seas and in the distant past. France had poured its treasure into wars, first the 7 Years' War, which left scars on the nation's pride and purse, then the American Revolution, where support for the rebels cost mountains of gold. Ships laden with supplies, soldiers sent across the Atlantic, and loans taken to fund the fight, all these were noble gestures, but each coin spent was a debt piling higher. The royal treasury, once a vault of plenty, now holds more promises than silver. Interest on these loans gnaws at the kingdom's finances like a relentless tide, and the people, already burdened by taxes, feel the squeeze of a crown that cannot pay its way. In Versailles, King Louis XVI sits in his study, surrounded by the soft ticking of clocks he loves to repair. His hands, better suited to delicate gears than the levers of state, fumble with the enormity of the crisis. He is a man of good intentions, raised to believe in his divine right to rule, yet he lacks the decisiveness to steer a sinking ship. His advisors, a parade of nobles and ministers, offer conflicting counsel. Some urge reform, others cling to tradition, and all fear the consequences of change. Louis listens, his brow furrowed, as reports of dwindling funds and rising bread prices pile up like autumn leaves. The kingdom's debt is a shadow that grows longer each day, and no one seems to know how to banish it. Marie Antoinette, the queen, moves through this storm with a grace that belies her growing unease. Her days are filled with the rustle of silk and the laughter of her inner circle, who gather in her private retreat, the Petit Trianon, a jewel-like haven where she escapes the rigid etiquette of court. There, she plays at simplicity, tending to a make-believe village with milkmaids and perfumed sheep, a pastoral fantasy that feels worlds away from the hunger beyond the gates. But her love of luxury, the diamonds, the gowns, the lavish fêtes, has made her a symbol of excess. The people whisper of her Austrian ways, of banquets that could feed villages, and though much of it is rumor, the truth matters less than the anger it fuels. She is not the cause of the crisis, but to many, she is its face. The tax system, a tangle of ancient privileges, only deepens the wound. The nobles and clergy, who own much of the land and wealth, are exempt from most taxes, leaving the burden on the third estate, the peasants, artisans, and merchants who can least afford it. A farmer might lose half his crop to tithes and dues before he even sees the market, while a noble's estate grows fat on untaxed rents. Attempts at reform, like those proposed by ministers such as Turgot or Necker, are met with resistance from the privileged classes, who guard their rights like sacred relics. Each failed reform is another stone added to the wall of resentment, and the people's patience wears thin as bread becomes a dream rather than a certainty. In the cities, the price of bread climbs higher, and the lines outside bakeries grow longer. A mother in Paris cradles her child, counting coins that won't stretch far enough, while her husband joins others in smoky taverns where talk of injustice simmers. Pamphlets, printed in secret, pass from hand to hand, their words sharp as knives, questioning why the many must suffer for the few. The countryside is no better. Harvests have been poor, and the winter of 1788 bites with a cruelty that leaves barns empty and bellies hollow. The people look to their king for relief, but the crown's coffers are as barren as their fields. Yet in this darkness, a faint light flickers. The king, pressured by his advisers and the growing clamor, considers a radical step, summoning the Estates General, a grand assembly not called in over a century. It's a gamble, a chance to bring the nation together to solve the crisis, but also a spark that could ignite something far greater. The people hear of it, and their whispers turn to murmurs of hope and defiance. Could this be the moment when their voices are finally heard? As the kingdom holds its breath, the stage is set for a gathering that will shake the foundations of France. What will happen when the doors of that assembly open, and the dreams of the many collide with the power of the few? Let's drift onward, into the gathering storm. As the candles burn low in the coffee houses of Paris, their flickering light casts shadows on faces bent over books and pamphlets, where words of rebellion are beginning to take root. It's the late 1780s, and France, though weighed down by empty coffers and hungry bellies, hums with a different kind of energy, one born not of swords or gold, but of ideas. The Enlightenment, a quiet revolution of the mind, has been simmering for decades. Its sparks carried on the breath of philosophers whose words drift like leaves through the streets, from the salons of the wealthy to the taverns of the poor. Let's wander through this world of thought, where the air smells of ink and coffee, and where the seeds of a new France are being sown in the hearts of those who dare to dream. Imagine a Parisian salon, its walls adorned with delicate wallpaper, where men and women in fine attire gather to sip chocolate and debate the nature of power. The room is warm, alive with the murmur of voices, as ideas from distant thinkers, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, dance in the conversation like fireflies. Voltaire, with his sharp wit, mocks the church's iron grip, his words slicing through centuries of dogma. His writings, smuggled past censors, speak of reason and tolerance, questioning why a king should rule by divine right when reason suggests otherwise. In a quiet corner, a young lawyer clutches a copy of Rousseau's The Social Contract, its opening line. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains, burning in his mind like a revelation. Rousseau's vision of a society where the people hold sovereignty feels like a promise, a whisper of a world where the many, not the few, decide their fate. These ideas are not confined to the elite. In the narrow alleys of Paris, where the scent of baking bread battles the stench of open sewers, artisans and shopkeepers gather in dimly lit taverns. Here, the pamphlets, cheap, printed sheets filled with fiery words, pass from hand to hand, read aloud to those who cannot decipher the script themselves. A cobbler pauses, his hammer still, as he listens to a neighbor read of liberty and equality, words that feel like a warm hearth after a long, cold day. The Enlightenment's language is simple yet profound, painting a vision of a world where a man's worth is not tied to his birth, but to his humanity. These ideas, once abstract, begin to take shape in the minds of those who toil, who pay taxes they cannot afford, who see their children go hungry while nobles feast. In the countryside, where the rhythm of life follows the plow and the seasons, these ideas arrive more slowly, carried by travelers or market-day gossip. A farmer, wiping sweat from his brow, hears of a philosopher who says the king's power comes not from God, but from the people's will. It's a dangerous thought, one that lingers as he trudges home to a supper of thin soup. The church, with its soaring cathedrals and stern priests, warns against such notions, preaching obedience as the path to salvation. Yet even some priests, those who live among the poor and see their suffering, begin to question the old order. The Enlightenment is a tide, lapping at the foundations of a kingdom built on tradition, and no one, not king, nor noble, nor peasant, can escape its pull. The philosophers themselves are not rebels in the streets, but their words are kindling. Montesquieu's call for a separation of powers, where no single man holds all authority, challenges the very idea of an absolute monarchy. Diderot's Encyclopédie, a vast collection of knowledge, spreads the belief that reason can unlock the mysteries of the world, making wisdom the property of all, not just the privileged. These works, banned yet widely read, are like whispers in a crowded room, growing louder with each passing day. They find their way into the hands of the young, the restless, the hopeful, those who see a France where justice is not a gift from above, but a right claimed from below. In the halls of Versailles, these ideas are met with unease. King Louis XVI, tinkering with his clocks, hears of the unrest they stir, but he cannot grasp their power. His advisors warn of seditious writings, urging censorship, yet the words slip through like water through a sieve. Marie Antoinette, in her rose-scented retreat, dismisses the chatter as the grumbling of the discontented, unaware that these ideas are weaving a new story for France, one that may not include her. The nobles, too, are caught in a strange dance, some intrigued by the Enlightenment's promise, others clinging to their ancient privileges like a shield against change. As night deepens over France, the stars seem to shine a little brighter, as if reflecting the spark of new possibilities. In the cities and villages, the people talk, dream, and argue, their voices weaving a tapestry of hope and defiance. The Enlightenment has given them a language to name their grievances, a vision to fuel their courage. But ideas alone cannot break chains. What will it take to turn whispers into action, to transform dreams into deeds? As the kingdom sleeps, a restless energy stirs, waiting for a moment to ignite. Let's drift closer to that spark, to the year when words will become a revolution. As dawn breaks over France, the year 1789 unfolds like a scroll, its pages heavy with the weight of a kingdom on the brink. The air carries the scent of spring blossoms, but beneath the surface, a restless energy hums, like the low rumble of thunder before a storm. The people of France, from the muddy fields of the countryside to the bustling streets of Paris, feel the strain of a nation stretched thin by debt, hunger, and the whispers of new ideas. The king, Louis XVI, sits uneasily on his throne, his clocks ticking in vain against the tide of change. Tonight, let's wander through the moments that lit the fuse of revolution, where hope and defiance met in a single, electric spark, setting the stage for a nation to redefine itself. The crisis that grips France is no longer a distant shadow. It's a weight felt in every home. Bread prices soar, and the markets of Paris are tense with the clatter of empty purses and the murmurs of angry voices. The winter of 1788 was cruel, freezing crops and leaving barns bare. And now, as spring warms the earth, hunger lingers like an unwelcome guest. The people look to Versailles, where the king and his court seem to float above the suffering, their lives a pageant of silk and gold. But even Louis cannot ignore the truth. The treasury is empty, and the old ways of borrowing and taxing cannot hold. In a moment of desperation, or perhaps reluctant hope, he makes a decision that will echo through history. He calls for the Estates General, a grand assembly of the kingdom's 3 estates, not summoned since 1614. The Estates General is a relic of a bygone era, a gathering meant to unite the clergy, nobles, and commoners in service of the crown. But as news of its summons spreads, it stirs something deeper, a flicker of possibility. In villages and towns, people gather in candlelit halls to draft cahiers de doléances, lists of grievances that pour out their frustrations. Taxes that crush, privileges that mock, and a king who seems deaf to their cries. These documents, written in careful script or scrawled with trembling hands, are a chorus of voices long silenced, now daring to speak. A baker in Lyon writes of bread he cannot afford to bake. A farmer in Provence pleads for relief from feudal dues, and a merchant in Paris dreams of a nation where all are equal before the law. The cahiers are sent to Versailles, a tide of paper carrying the weight of a people's hopes. When the Estates General convenes in May 1789, the palace is a swirl of color and tension. The clergy, in their scarlet robes, and the nobles, in their velvet cloaks, take their places with the confidence of centuries. The Third Estate, representing the vast majority of France, arrives in plain black suits, their numbers vast but their influence uncertain. The hall is grand, its ceilings painted with cherubs and clouds, but the air is thick with unease. The Third Estate demands change, a vote by head, not by estate, so their numbers might finally matter. The king hesitates, the nobles resist, and the clergy waver, but the Third Estate stands firm, their resolve hardened by the Enlightenment's promise of justice. Days of deadlock stretch on, and the tension grows like a bowstring pulled taut. Then, on June 20, a moment crystallizes. Locked out of their usual meeting hall, whether by accident or royal design, the delegates of the Third Estate gather on a nearby tennis court, its wooden floor creaking under their weight. There, under a gray sky, they take an oath that will reverberate through time. The tennis court oath. Led by men like Murraybow, whose voice booms with conviction, and Sieyes, whose pen has already declared the Third Estate the true heart of the nation, they swear to remain united and to draft a constitution for France. The air is electric, the words solemn, as these men, lawyers, merchants, and dreamers, declare themselves the National Assembly, the voice of the people. It's a bold act, a defiance that feels like the first crack in the ancient edifice of monarchy. In the streets of Paris, news of the oath spreads like wildfire. Taverns buzz with excitement, and the pamphlets multiply, their words bolder now, calling for liberty, for change, for a new France. The people, long accustomed to bowing, begin to stand a little taller. But the king is not silent. From Versailles, Louis XVI issues decrees to limit the assembly's power, and rumors swirl of troops gathering to restore order. The nobles whisper of rebellion, the clergy pray for peace, but the Third Estate, now the National Assembly, holds fast, their eyes fixed on a future they can almost touch. The city feels alive, its pulse quickening, as if it knows something momentous is coming. As night falls, the stars above Paris seem to burn brighter, mirroring the spark in the hearts of those who dare to dream. The tennis court oath is more than a promise. It's a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of a king. But what happens when a spark meets dry tinder? The streets are restless, the people hungry, and the Bastille, that grim fortress looming over Paris, stands as a symbol of all they despise. Could its ancient stones hold the key to the revolution's next chapter? Let's drift closer, to the moment when words give way to action, and a nation takes its first steps into the unknown. As the summer sun rises over Paris in July 1789, the city hums with a restless energy, like a hive stirred by unseen hands. The cobblestone streets, slick with morning dew, echo with the clatter of carts and the murmurs of crowds gathering in tight knots. The air carries the scent of sweat and fear, mingled with the faint hope of change. The tennis court oath has lit a spark, and the National Assembly, bold in its defiance, stands as a beacon for a people weary of hunger and silence. But in the shadow of this new dawn looms the Bastille, a hulking fortress of gray stone, its towers a grim reminder of royal power. Tonight, let's step into the chaos of a single day, July 14, 1789, when the whispers of revolution became a roar and the people of Paris struck a blow that would echo through history. The Bastille is more than a prison. It's a symbol, its walls steeped in stories of tyranny. To the people, it represents the king's iron fist, a place where dissenters vanish, where the powerful lock away the powerless. In truth, it holds few prisoners, only 7 on this summer day, but its myth looms large. Inside, the governor, Bernard de Launay, paces nervously, his garrison of soldiers dwarfed by the fortress's vastness. Outside, the streets are alive with rumor. The king is gathering troops, the assembly is in danger, and the Bastille holds a cache of gunpowder that could arm a rebellion. The people, driven by hunger and emboldened by the Enlightenment's call for liberty, are no longer content to wait. The morning begins quietly, but by midday, the Palais Royal, a bustling square, is a sea of voices. Orators stand on makeshift platforms, their words sharp as blades. Camille Desmoulins, a young journalist with fire in his eyes, calls for action, urging the crowd to arm themselves with whatever they can find. Men and women, their faces taut with determination, tear leaves from trees to wear as green cockades, a symbol of their defiance. The crowd swells, spilling into the streets, a tide of bakers, blacksmiths, and mothers, armed with pikes, scythes, and the weight of their grievances. They march toward the Hôtel des Invalides, seizing muskets and cannons, but the powder they need lies within the Bastille's walls. By afternoon, the fortress is surrounded. The crowd, now thousands strong, presses against its gates, their shouts rising like a storm. Faces peer from windows in nearby tenements, children cling to their parents, and the air crackles with tension. De Launay, outnumbered and uncertain, tries to negotiate, but the people are beyond words. They demand the gunpowder, the prisoners, the surrender of the Bastille itself. A drawbridge is lowered, then raised as talks falter. A shot rings out, perhaps a mistake, perhaps a signal, and the crowd surges forward. Muskets fire from the towers, and the people answer with cannons dragged from the Invalides. Smoke curls into the sky, and the scent of gunpowder mixes with the dust of shattered stone. The battle is fierce but brief. The crowd, fueled by desperation and dreams, breaches the outer defenses. A group of soldiers, defecting to the people's cause, helps turn the tide. By late afternoon, the gates fall, and the mob pours in, their cheers mingling with the clatter of boots on stone. De Launay is seized, his fate uncertain as the crowd's anger boils over. The prisoners, bewildered and frail, are freed, their release a symbol of liberty won. The Bastille, once unyielding, is now a ruin in the people's hands, its stones pried loose to be carried as trophies through the streets. Word spreads like wildfire. The Bastille has fallen. In the aftermath, Paris is a city transformed. The green cockades give way to red and blue, the colors of the city, joined by white for the king, a tricolor that will soon fly over a new France. The National Assembly, emboldened, presses forward with its demands, while in Versailles, King Louis XVI receives the news with a furrowed brow. "Is it a revolt?" he asks. "No, sire," comes the reply. "It is a revolution." The king's clocks tick on, but time is no longer his to control. The people, once voiceless, have found their roar, and the echoes of the Bastille's fall ripple through every village and town. As night settles over Paris, the city glows with torchlight, the streets alive with celebration and fear. The Bastille's stones, scattered in the hands of the victorious, are more than trophies. They are promises of a world remade. But victory comes at a cost. Blood stains the cobblestones, and the heads of the defeated are paraded on pikes, a grim reminder of the fury unleashed. The revolution has begun, but where will it lead? The people, united in triumph, now face a new question. What does liberty mean when hunger still gnaws at their bones? As the stars watch over a restless city, another storm brews, one driven not by cannons, but by the cries of the desperate. Let's drift closer, to the moment when the people march again, their voices rising like a tide. As autumn paints the leaves of France in shades of amber and crimson, the air in Paris grows sharp with the chill of October 1789. The fall of the Bastille, just months ago, still lingers in the city's memory, its stones scattered like seeds of rebellion. The tricolor cockades, red, white, and blue, dot the hats of men and women in the streets, a quiet badge of defiance. Yet the triumph of July has not filled empty stomachs, and the scent of bread, once a comfort, now taunts a people gripped by hunger. Tonight, let's walk with the women of Paris, ordinary souls driven by desperation. As they march to Versailles, their footsteps a drumbeat that will shake the foundations of the monarchy. The markets of Paris are a grim tableau. Women, their shawls pulled tight against the morning chill, stand in endless lines outside bakeries, their baskets empty as the shelves within. Bread, the heartbeat of every meal, is scarce, its price climbing beyond the reach of the poor. A loaf that once cost a day's wages now demands a week's, and the bakers, their flour sacks dwindling, shrug helplessly. In the narrow alleys, mothers hush crying children, their own eyes hollow with worry. The harvest has failed again, and the king's promises of relief, carried by couriers from Versailles, feel as empty as the granaries. Whispers of the Bastilles fall fuel their courage, but it's hunger that lights the spark. On the morning of October 5, the women gather in the marketplaces, their voices rising like a tide. They are fishwives, seamstresses, mothers, and daughters, their hands rough from work, their hearts heavy with fear for their families. A young woman, her face streaked with dirt, bangs a drum, its rhythm calling others to join. To Versailles! Someone shouts, and the cry is taken up, a chorus of anger and hope. Armed with kitchen knives, pitchforks, and the weight of their desperation, thousands of women, joined by some men, begin the 12-mile march to the palace. The rain falls in sheets, soaking their clothes, but their resolve burns brighter than the storm. The cobblestones of Paris give way to muddy roads, and the crowd swells, a river of humanity flowing toward the king's gilded sanctuary. Versailles, when they reach it, is a world apart. The palace gleams under the gray sky, its gardens a maze of fountains and clipped hedges, its halls alive with the rustle of silk and the clink of crystal. King Louis XVI, startled by the distant roar of the crowd, peers from a window, his advisors scrambling to respond. Marie Antoinette, in her private chambers, hears the shouts and feels a chill that no fire can warm. The women, muddy and drenched, gather before the palace gates, their voices a cacophony of demands. Bread, justice, a king who listens. They are not scholars of the Enlightenment, nor orators of the Assembly, but their plea is as powerful as any pamphlet: survival. The palace guards, outnumbered, hesitate. Some women push through the gates, their anger spilling into the marble courtyards. Negotiations falter as the crowd grows restless, their chants echoing off the palace walls. A delegation of women, led by a market vendor named Maillard, is allowed inside to speak with the king. Louis, his face pale, listens as they speak of children who cry for bread, of homes where hearths are cold. He promises food, his voice soft but uncertain, and orders grain released from royal stores. But promises are not enough for the crowd outside, who demand more. They want the king and queen to return to Paris, to live among the people, not above them. As night falls, the rain-soaked crowd camps outside the palace, their fires flickering like stars against the dark. Tensions flare when a shot is fired, accident or provocation, and blood stains the ground. By dawn, the crowd breaches the palace, their footsteps thundering through its halls. Marie Antoinette flees through a secret passage, her heart pounding, as the mob reaches her empty bedchamber. The royal family, cornered, agrees to return to Paris, escorted by the women and the National Guard, who have joined the march. The journey back is a strange procession. The king and queen in their carriage, surrounded by a sea of pikes and tricolor flags, the women singing and shouting, their baskets now filled with hope and defiance. Paris greets them with cheers and jeers, the Tuileries Palace their new home, a gilded cage in the heart of the city. The women's march has done more than bring the king to Paris. It has shown the power of the people, their voices louder than any cannon. The National Assembly, inspired, pushes forward with reforms, but the city remains restless. Bread is still scarce, and the king's presence, once a distant myth, now feels too close, too human. As the women return to their homes, their courage becomes a story told in every tavern, every market. But hunger is a relentless foe, and the revolution is far from over. What happens when a people, emboldened by victory, begin to dream of a world without kings? Let's drift onward, to the dawn of a new order, where the future hangs in the balance. As the autumn of 1789 fades into winter, Paris hums with a new rhythm. Its streets alive with the echoes of the women's march and the weight of the royal family's presence in the Tuileries Palace. The air carries the crisp scent of fallen leaves, mingling with the smoke of tavern fires where the people gather, their voices a blend of hope and defiance. The fall of the Bastille and the March on Versailles have cracked the ancient shell of monarchy, and through those cracks, a new vision seeps, a France not ruled by a king's divine right, but by the will of its people. Tonight, let's wander through the birth of a republic, where the dreams of the Enlightenment take root, and the nation begins to reshape itself, one bold step at a time. The Tuileries, once a quiet retreat for royalty, is now a stage where King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette play reluctant roles. The palace, though grand, feels like a cage, its windows offering views of a city that no longer bows. The king, his face etched with worry, tries to navigate this new world, his advisors urging compromise while his heart clings to tradition. The queen, her laughter dimmed, moves through her days under the watchful eyes of the National Guard. The people, too, are watching, their tricolor cockades a quiet reminder that power is shifting. The National Assembly, now the heartbeat of the revolution, meets in a converted riding school, its debates fierce and fervent, as men like Mirabeau and Sieyès argue for a nation reborn. In the summer of 1790, the Assembly takes a radical step, dismantling the old feudal order. With the stroke of a pen, they abolish the privileges of the nobility, titles, land rights, and exemptions that had defined France for centuries. The ancient regime begins to crumble, its foundations eroded by the tide of equality. The clergy, too, face change. Their lands are seized, their role redefined by the civil constitution of the clergy, which makes priests servants of the state, not the church. In villages, peasants cheer as feudal dues vanish. Their fields now their own, but in grand chateaux, nobles whisper of betrayal, some fleeing across borders to plot against the revolution. The Assembly's boldest act comes in August 1789, though its echoes grow louder now, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This document, born of Enlightenment ideals, is a beacon of hope, proclaiming that all men are born free and equal, with rights to liberty, property, and security. Its words are read aloud in market squares, printed in pamphlets that pass from hand to hand, and discussed in candlelit homes. A baker in Paris, his hands dusted with flour, pauses to listen, his heart stirring at the idea that he, too, has a voice. A seamstress, her fingers sore from stitching, dreams of a world where her children might rise beyond their station. The Declaration is more than law, it's a promise, a vision of a France where justice is not a gift, but a right. Yet the path to this new world is fraught. The Assembly is a mosaic of voices, moderates who seek a constitutional monarchy, radicals who dream of a republic, and others torn between fear and ambition. In the streets, the people grow restless. Bread remains scarce, and the king's reluctance to embrace reform fuels suspicion. Clubs like the Jacobins and Cordeliers spring up, their meetings filled with fiery speeches and calls for action. Men like Danton, with his booming voice, and Robespierre, with his quiet intensity, begin to rise, their words sharpening the edge of the revolution. The tricolor flag flies higher, but so do tensions, as factions form and the dream of unity frays. In June 1791, the revolution faces a crisis that shakes its core. King Louis XVI, torn between duty and despair, attempts to flee Paris with his family, hoping to rally support from loyalists abroad. Disguised as servants, they slip out of the Tuileries under cover of night, their carriage rattling toward the border. But the plan falters in the town of Varennes, where a postmaster recognizes the king's face from a coin. The royal family is captured and returned to Paris, their flight a betrayal that hardens hearts. The people, who once hoped for a king who would listen, now see a traitor. The Assembly suspends Louis's powers, and the word republic begins to echo louder, a whisper turning into a shout. Paris buzzes with this new reality. In the cafes, pamphlets multiply, their ink still wet with calls for a government without a king. The Champs-Élysées, once a place for noble strolls, hosts a grand festival in 1790, the Fête de la Fédération, where thousands swear loyalty to the nation, not the crown. The tricolor waves above, and for a moment, unity feels possible. But beneath the celebration, cracks widen. The nobles who remain plot in secret, while émigrés abroad urge foreign kings to intervene. The people, emboldened, begin to imagine a France where power rises from the streets, not the throne. The assembly drafts a constitution, limiting the king's role, but the question lingers. Can a king and a revolution coexist? As the stars shine over Paris, the city feels like a crucible, forging something new from the ashes of the old. The Declaration of the Rights of Man glows in the hearts of the hopeful, but the shadow of division looms. The king, now a reluctant prisoner, watches as his power slips away. The people, tasting freedom, grow bolder, but also more divided. What happens when the dream of equality meets the reality of power? The revolution, like a river, flows toward an uncertain future, its currents growing darker, more turbulent. As the nation teeters on the edge of a republic, a new force rises, one that will wield not just words, but blades. Let's drift closer, to the shadow that will soon fall over France. As the moon casts its pale glow over Paris in the early 1790s, the city pulses with a feverish energy, caught between the bright promise of a republic and the gathering clouds of fear. The tricolor flags flutter in the breeze, their colors a symbol of a nation reborn. But the streets below are restless, filled with the clatter of boots and the murmur of uneasy voices. The revolution, once a spark of hope, has grown into a fire that threatens to consume all in its path. The king, now a prisoner in all but name, watches from the Tuileries as the National Assembly carves out a new France. Tonight, let's wander through the darkening heart of the revolution, where ideals of liberty clash with the chilling reality of the guillotine, and a nation learns the cost of its dreams. The year is 1792, and France is at war, not just with itself, but with the monarchs of Europe who see the revolution as a threat to their own thrones. Austria and Prussia, urged on by émigré nobles, send armies toward France's borders, their drums echoing with promises of restoration. In Paris, the war fuels both patriotism and paranoia. The people, still haunted by hunger, fear betrayal from within as much as invasion from without. The National Assembly, now replaced by the more radical Legislative Assembly, declares the nation in danger, calling for volunteers to defend the revolution. Young men, their hearts ablaze with the Declaration of the Rights of Man, march off singing La Marseillaise, its defiant verses a new anthem for a new France. But in the capital, unity frays. The assembly is a storm of factions, Girondins, who seek a moderate republic, and Jacobins, whose voices grow louder, demanding purity and vigilance. Among them rises Maximilien Robespierre, a slight man with a lawyer's precision and a zealot's fire. His speeches, delivered in a calm, measured tone, speak of virtue and the will of the people, but his eyes burn with an unyielding vision. The Jacobins, meeting in smoky halls, call for an end to the monarchy, their words echoing in the streets where crowds chant for justice. In August 1792, the spark ignites. A mob storms the Tuileries, clashing with the king's Swiss guards in a bloody melee. The royal family flees to the assembly, and the monarchy is suspended, its centuries-long reign crumbling like ash. The birth of the First Republic in September 1792 is a moment of triumph, but it comes cloaked in shadows. The National Convention, a new body elected to draft a republican constitution, declares France a republic, and King Louis XVI is stripped of his titles, now merely Citizen Louis Capet. His trial is a spectacle, a clash of ideals and anger. In January 1793, the convention votes, narrowly, for his death. On a cold morning, Louis steps onto a scaffold in the Place de la Révolution, his face calm as the guillotine's blade falls. The crowd roars, some in triumph, others in shock, as the king's blood stains the ground. Marie Antoinette will follow months later, her once gilded life ending under the same merciless blade. The guillotine, a machine of chilling efficiency, becomes the revolution's grim symbol. Designed to make death equal for all, it stands in public squares, its blade gleaming under the sun. The executions begin slowly, traitors, nobles, those deemed enemies of the revolution, but soon accelerate into what history will call the Reign of Terror. Robespierre, now a leading voice in the Committee of Public Safety, argues that terror is the guardian of virtue, a necessary purge to protect the Republic. The convention, gripped by fear of counter-revolution, agrees, and the guillotine's rhythm becomes a heartbeat of dread. Nobles, priests, and even ordinary citizens face the blade, their crimes often vague: suspicion, disloyalty, or a whispered word against the revolution. In Paris, the streets are a paradox of fervor and fear. Market women, once heroes of the March on Versailles, now watch neighbors vanish, denounced by a glance or a grudge. Pamphlets, once filled with hope, now list the names of the condemned, their ink a roll call of death. The prisons overflow, and the carts rumble daily to the scaffold, their wheels creaking under the weight of the doomed. Yet amid the horror, the revolution burns on. The armies, fueled by the passion of the Republic, push back foreign invaders, their victories a testament to the people's will. Schools teach the ideals of liberty, and the convention dreams of a constitution that will enshrine equality forever. But the cost is heavy. Friends turn on friends, and the revolution devours its own. The Girondins, once voices of reason, are purged, their leaders guillotined as Robespierre's vision narrows. The city, once alive with hope, now whispers of betrayal, and the tricolor seems stained with blood. The people who once marched for bread and justice now wonder where their revolution is leading. As the guillotine's shadow lengthens, a question hangs in the air, as sharp as the blade itself. Can a republic built on terror truly embody the dreams of liberty? The answer lies just beyond the horizon, where the revolution's fiercest storm is yet to break. Let's drift closer, to the moment when the blade begins to turn on its masters. As the summer of 1794 casts a weary light over Paris, the city lies under a pall of fear, its streets haunted by the relentless rhythm of the guillotine. The tricolor flags, once bright with the promise of liberty, now flutter over a nation fraying at the seams. The reign of terror, born of the revolution's fervor, has turned inward, its blade sparing neither friend nor foe. The air carries the metallic tang of blood and the murmur of whispered accusations, as neighbors watch neighbors with guarded eyes. Maximilien Robespierre, once the voice of virtue, stands at the heart of this storm, his vision of a pure republic driving France into a spiral of dread. Tonight, let's wander through the twilight of the terror, where the revolution begins to devour its own, and a weary people search for a path to peace. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Robespierre and his allies, rules with an iron grip, its decrees swift and unforgiving. The guillotine, a machine meant to equalize justice, has become a grim reaper, claiming lives by the hundreds. In Paris's Place de la Révolution, crowds gather daily, their faces a mix of grim fascination and quiet horror. Nobles, priests, and royalists were its first victims, but now the blade falls on anyone deemed an enemy of the Republic: merchants accused of hoarding, citizens who spoke too freely, even revolutionaries whose zeal faltered. The prisons, once symbols of royal tyranny, are now packed with the revolution's own, their walls echoing with the footsteps of the condemned. Robespierre, with his pale face and unyielding gaze, believes he is saving the revolution. In the National Convention, his speeches weave a vision of a republic cleansed of corruption, where virtue reigns supreme. But his words, once inspiring, now chill the air. The Jacobins, once a voice for the people, have become a tribunal, their members denouncing colleagues with a fervor that borders on madness. The law of 22 Prairial, passed in June 1794, strips away the last protections of the accused, allowing trials to end in death with little more than a whisper of suspicion. The guillotine's blade rises and falls, its rhythm a grim heartbeat, and the carts that carry the condemned creak through streets lined with silent onlookers. Yet, even in this darkness, cracks appear. The people, exhausted by fear and hunger, begin to question the cost of this purity. The victories against foreign armies, hard won by soldiers singing of liberty, have secured France's borders, easing the panic that fueled the terror. In the cafes and markets, whispers turn to murmurs. How many must die to save the Republic? The convention, once united in its radicalism, fractures under the weight of paranoia. Men like Danton, whose voice once shook the halls, have already fallen to the blade, accused of leniency. Others, like Saint-Just, stand by Robespierre, but doubt creeps into even their ranks. The revolution, like a fire burning too hot, risks consuming all it sought to build. In July 1794, the tide turns. On the 8th of Thermidor, July 26 by the old calendar, Robespierre addresses the convention, his voice sharp with warnings of new conspiracies. But his vague accusations, naming no names, unsettle his allies. Who is safe when even the incorruptible suspects betrayal? The next day, the convention strikes back. In a chaotic session, shouts drown out Robespierre's pleas as deputies accuse him of tyranny. "The Republic is lost," one cries. "If we let this man rule—" Robespierre, stunned, is arrested alongside Saint Just and others, their names once synonymous with revolution now branded as its enemies. The halls of the convention echo with a new resolve. The terror must end. The night of 9 Thermidor is a blur of fear and defiance. Robespierre, imprisoned, is freed briefly by loyalists, but the tide has turned. The National Guard, once his allies, sides with the convention, and by morning he is recaptured, his jaw shattered by a gunshot, accident or suicide, no one knows. On July 28, 1794, the guillotine claims its most famous victim. Robespierre, the man who dreamed of a virtuous republic, faces the blade he once wielded, his blood mingling with the thousands before him. The crowd, weary and subdued, watches in silence, the air heavy with the weight of an era ending. The Thermidorian reaction, as history will call it, is a pivot. The convention dismantles the Committee of Public Safety, frees prisoners, and slows the guillotine's pace. The Jacobin Club is shuttered, its halls silent. The people, drained by years of upheaval, yearn for stability, but the Republic is fragile, its ideals battered by the terror's excesses. The wealthy reemerge, their fashions bolder, their parties a defiant celebration of survival. Yet in the streets the poor still hunger, and the revolution's promises, liberty, equality, fraternity, feel distant. The convention drafts a new constitution, one that balances power with caution, but the question lingers. Can a nation scarred by terror heal? As the stars rise over Paris, the city feels lighter yet uncertain. The guillotine stands quiet, its blade still, but the revolution's fire has not gone out. The people who toppled a king and defied empires now face a new challenge, building a republic that can endure. From the ashes of the terror, a new figure begins to rise, his ambition as vast as the nation's dreams. Who will lead France into this uncertain dawn, and what will become of the ideals that sparked a revolution? Let's drift closer to the final chapter of this turbulent tale, where a new France takes shape under a rising star. As the summer of 1794 fades into the crisp days of autumn, Paris breathes a cautious sigh. Its streets quieter now, the guillotine's shadow receding like a fading nightmare. The reign of terror has ended, its architects silenced, and the tricolor flags, though tattered, still wave above a city weary yet hopeful. The revolution, born in the fire of 1789, has reshaped France, tearing down the old order and leaving in its place a republic fragile but alive. The people who once stormed fortresses and marched on palaces now walk a path uncharted, their dreams of liberty tempered by the scars of violence. Tonight, let's wander through the final chapter of this revolution, where a new France rises from the ashes, and a single man steps forward to guide its destiny under the stars. The Thermidorian reaction has swept away the excesses of the terror, but the Republic remains a fragile thing, balanced on the edge of hope and chaos. The National Convention, now free from Robespierre's shadow, drafts a new constitution in 1795, one that seeks stability over zeal. The Directory, a government of 5 leaders, takes power, its rule a compromise between the revolution's ideals and the need for order. In the streets, the people feel the shift. The wealthy who hid during the terror return with lavish gowns and gilded carriages, their salons buzzing with talk of a France reborn. Yet, for the poor, the revolution's promises, bread, equality, a voice, remain elusive. The markets are fuller, but prices are high, and the memory of hunger lingers like a ghost. The Republic faces threats from all sides. Royalists, dreaming of a restored monarchy, plot in secret, their whispers carried across borders to émigrés and foreign courts. Jacobins, though weakened, still stir in the shadows, their radical vision unquenched. Europe's monarchs, wary of France's republic, watch with swords half drawn, their armies a constant menace. Yet the revolution's spirit endures in the soldiers who defend the nation. Their victories against Austria and Prussia proof that a people's army can rival kings. In villages and towns, the ideals of the Declaration of the Rights of Man, liberty, equality, fraternity, are taught to children, sewn into the fabric of a new national identity. Into this uncertain dawn steps a figure whose ambition burns brighter than the revolution itself, Napoleon Bonaparte. A young Corsican officer, his name first echoes in 1793, when he drives British forces from Toulon with a strategist's brilliance. By 1795, he is in Paris, his quick thinking saving the Directory from a royalist uprising. His rise is meteoric, his eyes sharp with a vision that sees beyond the Republic's struggles. Sent to Italy in 1796, he leads a ragged army to stunning victories, his campaigns a blend of daring and genius. The people, hungry for heroes, speak his name with awe, their cheers drowning out the creak of the Directory's faltering rule. Napoleon is no king, but his presence feels regal, his charisma a magnet for a nation seeking direction. The Directory, plagued by corruption and division, begins to crumble. Economic woes persist, and the people grow restless, their faith in the Republic waning. In 1799, Napoleon returns from a campaign in Egypt, his reputation gilded by tales of conquest, though the truth is less glorious. Sensing opportunity, he seizes power in a coup on 18 Brumaire, November 9, 1799, dissolving the Directory and establishing the consulate, with himself as first consul. The revolution's fire is not extinguished, but redirected, its ideals now shaped by a man who promises order and glory. The people, exhausted by years of upheaval, welcome his steady hand, even as they wonder what it means for their hard-won freedoms. Napoleon's rule marks a new chapter. He reforms the law, creating the Napoleonic Code, a system that blends revolutionary equality with disciplined order, its influence destined to echo across nations. He stabilizes the economy, rebuilds France's pride, and negotiates peace with Europe's powers, if only for a time. The Church, once humbled, is restored to a place of respect through the Concordat of 1801, though under the state's watchful eye. Yet Napoleon's ambition knows no bounds. By 1804, he crowns himself emperor, a title that stirs unease among those who fought to end kingship. The Republic fades, but the Revolution's legacy, its ideals of equality and justice, lives on, woven into the fabric of a France transformed. As night falls over this new France, the stars seem to shine with a quiet promise. The Revolution, with its triumphs and terrors, has redrawn the nation's soul. The Bastille is gone, its stones scattered. The monarchy is a memory, its divine right shattered. The Declaration of the Rights of Man endures, a beacon for generations to come, its words inspiring struggles far beyond France's borders. The people, who rose from hunger to topple a king, now rest under a new order, their dreams tempered but not extinguished. Napoleon's shadow looms large, but what will his empire bring? A new dawn or a return to old chains? Let's close our eyes, carried by the gentle tide of history, and dream of a world forever changed by the courage of the many. As the stars twinkle above a quieted France, the echoes of the French Revolution linger, like the soft ripples of a stone cast into a still pond. We've wandered through the cobblestone streets of Paris, felt the weight of hunger in the countryside, and stood in the shadow of the guillotine, where dreams of liberty clashed with the harsh realities of power. The Revolution, born in the fervor of 1789, was no mere chapter in a history book. It was a tempest that tore down the ancient pillars of monarchy, reshaped a nation, and sent its ideals rippling across the world. From the storming of the Bastille to the rise of Napoleon, we've seen a people rise, falter, and rise again, their courage and contradictions woven into a tapestry that still captivates us today. Picture, for a moment, the France we left behind. A land where the tricolor flag flies over a republic forged in fire, where the Declaration of the Rights of Man stands as a testament to the power of ideas. The revolution was not perfect. Its path was stained with blood, its promises often unfulfilled for those who needed them most. Yet its legacy endures. The notion that power belongs to the people, that equality is a right, not a privilege, and that a nation can reinvent itself. These were the gifts of 1789, carried forward through time. In the quiet of your room, as you drift towards sleep, imagine the faces of those who marched. The women of Versailles, their voices raw with hunger. The delegates of the tennis court oath, swearing unity under a gray sky. The soldiers singing La Marseillaise as they faced empires. Their story is not just France's. It's a reminder of what humanity can dare to dream. The French Revolution teaches us that change, though messy and costly, begins with the courage to question, to demand, to act. It's a story of ordinary souls, bakers, mothers, dreamers, who reshaped a nation not with swords, but with the strength of their will. As you rest tonight, let their voices linger, a gentle lullaby of a world remade. The revolution's fire has dimmed, but its embers still glow in the laws, the freedoms, and the hopes that shape our world today. France, under Napoleon's shadow, stands at a crossroads, its future uncertain but its spirit unbroken. If this journey through history has soothed your mind or sparked your curiosity, I invite you to stay with me. Subscribe to my channel for more tales told in the quiet of the night, where history unfolds like a dream to guide you to sleep. Share this video with someone who loves the past or simply needs a moment of calm. Leave a comment below. Tell me what part of the revolution stirred you most, or what other stories you'd like to hear. Your thoughts are the heartbeat of this channel, and I'm grateful for every one of you who joins me in these gentle wanderings through time. Until next time, this is Sherry, wishing you peaceful dreams under the stars of history.